They were sure you'd be the one to fold when they started pulling back, when the text slowed down, when the energy shifted, when they stopped putting in effort. They fully believed you'd react the same way others had. They thought you'd panic. They thought you'd chase. They thought you'd do everything to win them back. In their mind, that moment was inevitable. They were so confident in their importance that they believed all it would take was a little distance for you to come running. But this time, something different happened. You didn't chase. You didn't break mazes. You didn't beg. You went quiet. At first, they brushed it off. They thought you were just playing it cool. They told themselves, give it a day or two. They'll be back. They even convinced themselves this was a new way of trying to get attention. But then you stayed silent. No check-ins, no questions, no attempts to fix what they broke. And that's when their confidence started to crack. Because what they were expecting was a reaction. Any reaction. Drama, tears, confusion, even anger would have fed their ego. But your silence, that was the one thing they couldn't spin in their favor. And the longer it lasted, the louder it got. They started wondering, wait, are they really done? Why haven't they reached out? Did I push too far? The thoughts they once believed you would be having, now they were having them. The chase they expected from you was now haunting them. They assumed that by pulling away, they were in control. They thought silence would make them look powerful. But instead, your lack of reaction made them feel replaceable. For someone who thrives on attention, being ignored feels like emotional starvation. They thought you'd be suffering. They thought you'd fall apart without them. But now they're the ones checking their phone. They're the ones replaying old messages. They're the ones wondering if you ever really needed them at all. And the scariest part? They're starting to realize the only person chasing anything now is them. Now the silence is starting to echo in ways they never anticipated. Oh, what began as a power move, a quiet little strategy to make you sweat, has slowly backfired. Because now they're the ones sweating. They thought they were teaching you a lesson, that pulling away would spark your anxiety, make you question everything, and eventually pull you back in, chasing, explaining, apologizing. But instead of creating panic in your world, all they did was create a distance they can't close. And that distance is changing everything. At first, they thought they were buying time. But the more time passes, the more the silence shifts from strategy to consequence. You didn't fill the space with pleading or over-explaining. You didn't show up in their inbox trying to remind them of what you once had. You didn't try to make them feel bad or guilt them into staying connected. You simply removed your energy, and now they're realizing what your presence actually meant. Because here's the part they never saw coming. It wasn't just your messages or your attention that they missed. It was how they felt when they were around you. It was the way you made them feel seen. It was the emotional security they didn't even realize they had until you were gone. They thought the game was about control, but now they see that you were the value all along. And this realization doesn't hit them all at once. It creeps in slowly. It shows up when someone else tries to connect with them, and it feels forced. It shows up when they remember a moment between you two and feel something they can't recreate. It shows up when they laugh at something and instinctively want to tell you, but realize they no longer have access to you. That's when the regret starts digging deeper, not just regret for how they treated you, but for misjudging you entirely. They thought silence meant weakness. They thought walking away meant giving up. But now they're starting to understand. You didn't walk away to hurt them. You walked away because you were done hurting yourself. And that difference, that clarity, is what makes them suffer more than anything else. Because nothing destroys the ego like being met with complete peace. No drama, no fight, just absence. And now the person who once thought they were in control is realizing that they're not even in the picture anymore. And that's when it hits them hardest. You're not just gone. You've evolved. They expected you to hit pause on your life while they played games with yours. They assumed you'd sit in confusion, orbiting around them, replaying every word, wondering what you did wrong. The truth is, you were never confused. You were just done. Done explaining your worth to someone who already saw it, but didn't want to admit it. Done waiting for effort from someone who was only putting in just enough to keep you hoping. Done entertaining the illusion of connection when they were treating you like an option. While they were busy checking if the bait worked, waiting for your name to light up on their screen, you were moving on, not out of bitterness, not to make a point, but because staying would have meant abandoning yourself. And that's the part they can't handle. Because now they see it. You're not silent because you're hurt. You're silent because you're healed. You're not chasing because you gave up. You're not chasing because you chose peace over chaos. They assumed silence was a void, something they could fill when they felt like it. But now it's a mirror reflecting everything they did and everything you no longer tolerate. In that reflection, they see the moments they dismissed you. They hear the tone in their voice when they brushed off your needs. They replay the times you gave and gave while they stayed comfortably taking. The silence isn't empty, it's loud with accountability. And here's where the suffering multiplies. Because once the ego is starved and control is gone, regret takes its place. Regret that they didn't appreciate what they had. Regret that they thought withholding affection would make them more valuable. Regret that in trying to create distance, they lost access to the one person who truly saw them. Now they're surrounded by noise, social media, temporary flings, meaningless attention. But it all feels hollow, because what they really want isn't more eyes on them. They want your energy back, your steady presence, your genuine care, your calm voice in a chaotic world. But they can't ask for it because they know they'd have to come to you as someone different. Not with charm, not with games, but with honesty, with vulnerability, with ownership. And that's terrifying. So instead they suffer silently, smiling in public, spiraling in private, while you continue living without them. Not to prove a point, but because you've finally proven something to yourself. Now the hardest part for them isn't the silence itself, it's realizing that you're not coming back. Not because you're playing a role, not because you're trying to make them miss you, but because somewhere along the way, you stopped needing their validation. And that scares them more than anything else ever could. Because their entire sense of power came from your reactions, your concern, your effort, the way you used to show up even after they pushed you away. But now you're not even in the same story anymore. They're flipping through pages, hoping to find where they left off with you. But you're not there. You've already started a new chapter, one where your energy isn't wasted trying to convince anyone of your value. You're not posting cryptic messages hoping they'll see it. You're not scanning every notification thinking it might be them. You're not secretly wishing they'll have a change of heart. Because the shift didn't just happen in the silence. It happened in you. You stopped needing closure. You stopped needing revenge. You stopped needing them to realize anything because you already did. And that's what stings the most. It's not that you disappeared, it's that you detached, emotionally, mentally, energetically, and they can feel that distance in their bones. Because even if they came back now, it wouldn't be the same. You've raised your standards, you've seen the truth, you've remembered what it feels like to choose yourself. And now they're faced with a harsh truth. They didn't lose you because of one big mistake. They lost you because of the little ways they made you feel like you weren't enough. And now you're done pretending you ever were. So they sit in the silence they thought they could handle. And you finally feel free. The more time passes, the heavier that freedom weighs on them. Not because it's yours, but because they know it used to be theirs to ruin. They're haunted now, not by what happened between you, but by everything they didn't do when they had the chance. They didn't appreciate your consistency. They didn't match your energy. They didn't recognize that you were showing up, not because you were weak, but because you cared. And now they're watching you exist without them, not just survive, but glow. You're moving differently now. Your presence is less accessible. Your attention is more selective. Your peace is non-negotiable. And here's the irony. The very detachment they tried to force on you is now the storm they can't get out of. They'll laugh with others, but it won't land the same. They'll talk to new people, but none of them feel right. They'll keep refreshing their feed, hoping for a glimpse of the old you, but you're gone. Not hidden, not waiting, gone. Because when someone finally realizes that being taken for granted wasn't something you were going to normalize forever, they have two options: own it and grow, or pretend they didn't care to begin with. And most choose the second. Why? Because ownership is painful. It's painful to admit they pushed you away, someone who only wanted to love them. It's painful to admit their ego drove away the very comfort they now crave. But the worst pain? Knowing you didn't slam the door, you didn't rage or lash out, you simply stopped opening it. And that quiet exit is what echoes the loudest in their mind, because they weren't prepared for you to choose dignity over explanation. They weren't ready for you to walk away without a dramatic finale. They didn't expect you to heal in silence while they spiraled in noise. And now every attempt to move on feels hollow. Every new connection feels temporary. Every moment alone feels like a consequence, not of losing you, but of thinking you'd never leave. So they scroll, they remember, they regret. And you fret, and you rise, not to spite them, but because the version of you that chased, begged, waited, hoped doesn't exist anymore. As the days turn to weeks, they begin to understand something their pride kept them from seeing when it mattered most. You weren't just a chapter in their story. You were the moment the entire book could have changed. But they skimmed it, skipped over the meaning, ignored the depth because they were too busy looking for excitement, for the next dopamine hit, for the thrill of control. They mistook your consistency for boredom, your vulnerability for weakness, your presence for permanence. And now that you're gone, really gone, not just physically but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, they feel it everywhere. It's in the silence of their bedroom after midnight when the glow of their screen offers no distraction. It's in the middle of laughter that dies too quickly because none of it feels full without you. It's in the fake smiles they wear when they tell themselves they're unbothered, but they are bothered deeply. Because while they were busy measuring your reactions to validate themselves, you were quietly watching them reveal who they really are. And when it finally clicked that they didn't value your effort, your love, your energy, you didn't explode. You evaporated. No last warning, no angry rant, no grand exit. You simply stopped feeding what was never grateful. And here's what makes it worse for them. They can't even blame you. They can't say you didn't care. You did for far too long. They can't say you didn't try. You tried even when you shouldn't have. They can't say you ghosted them. You gave them every opportunity to show up. They chose not to. And now they're stuck with a quiet they never wanted. Not because they're alone, but because you're not accessible anymore. And that version of you, the version that saw the best in them, the version that would have gone to war for them, the version that held space for their flaws and still loved them anyway, doesn't exist for them anymore. They're realizing too late that not everyone will fight to stay once they feel consistently pushed away. You didn't lose them, they lost you. And the worst part, you didn't even slam the door. You simply stopped answering when they knocked. No. And now they're left to face the slow-burning aftermath, not of your anger, but of your absence. Because here's what they never understood until it was far too late. Real loss isn't loud. It's not full of screaming matches, fiery goodbyes, or dramatic scenes played out in text messages. Real loss creeps in quietly. It builds in silence. It echoes in the ordinary, like when they catch a familiar scent and instantly think of you. Or when they hear your favorite song and feel a drop in their chest they can't explain. Or when they have good news and for a split second they reach for their phone, only to remember you're no longer their person. See, they expected drama. They were ready for the arguments, the over-explaining, the tears, the let's talk messages. They were counting on it because that meant they still mattered. But the way you walked away, without begging, without proving, without even trying to make them understand, that was worse. Because it meant you finally realized your value. It meant they no longer had the power to trigger you. It meant you stopped needing to be understood by someone who refused to understand you. And now they sit in that reality. They might never tell anyone how much they check for your updates. They'll never admit they reread your old messages just to feel close to something real again. They'll laugh a little too hard in public, post a little too confidently, swipe through people who will never measure up, all while wondering, why does this still hurt? The truth is, they never thought this day would come. They thought they had time. They thought you'd always be there, just a message away, just one weak moment from returning. But you didn't wait because you understood something they didn't. Closure isn't something they give you. Closure is when you decide they don't get to have access to you anymore. You didn't cut them off to make a point. You walked away to find your peace. And now that you found it, you're not willing to trade it, not even for an apology. And that's what's killing their ego now. Because no matter what they post, no matter who they distract themselves with, no matter how much they pretend they're fine, they know they're the ones who underestimated you. They're the ones who couldn't meet you where you stood. And now they're haunted by the version of you they'll never have access to again, the version that wanted them. And all they can do now is replay it in their head while you keep living in peace they can't disturb anymore. If this message hit home, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and check out the next one on your screen. It goes even deeper.